It's great to see so many familiar faces. For those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Julia Howard, and I am a client success consultant here at Passle. And I am very excited to be here today and for you all to be here to be able to hear the very special live edition of our CMO Series Podcast. So today I get to introduce one of the most impactful authors on the Passle platform. He is a user who is building a remarkable legacy through creating and sharing his expert insights. Leading the charge in thought leadership with over 1,000 pieces of content over the course of the past 8 years, each of which was crafted to fuel business development and foster meaningful connections with his audience. His dedication to sharing his thoughts has not only expanded the firm's reach, but also set a very powerful example across the industry. Interviewed by Passle's CMO, Kurnit, please join me in welcoming Jeff Greenbaum, Managing Partner at Frankfurt, Kurnit, Klein, and Selz.
Hi everyone. Thanks Jeff for joining us.
Sure.
We always have 3 rules at Passle events. Does anyone remember them? No? Okay. 1, we've got lots of clever people in the audience, so we like to make it nice and interactive. So if you've got questions throughout, please ask them. If you've got your own stories, please tell us those as well. Secondly, we always ask everyone to try and learn just one thing, at least one thing. So something you can bring back to your office tomorrow and say, I've got this great new idea. And 3, we're trying to build a bit of a community here. So afterwards, you all have to stay for at least 1 or 2 drinks, and you have to introduce yourselves to each other. Say hi, tell everyone who you are, and build those strong relationships, because there's always great networking in a room like this. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. We are delighted to have Jeff here because we often talk to CMOs and marketing leaders across law firms, and we're often being asked, please, can you get more lawyers and more attorneys talking at your events? So when we thought about this, the first person we thought of was Jeff, because when you look at the stats in the Passle platform, no one has better performing content than Jeff. So before we begin, Jeff, maybe just tell everyone a bit about you, who you are, where you come from, what you do, and a bit of background in your career to date.
Okay, that's a big open-ended question. I am a managing partner of Frankfurt Kurnit, which is about a 105, 110 lawyer firm. We're based in New York and LA. It's a media and entertainment firm. We do some other things too, but really the brand is media and entertainment. I've been there for most of my career. I spent the first couple years at a big firm and then realized that was not for me and have just been extraordinarily happy for whatever now, something like 27 years at Frankfurt Kurnit. I'm an advertising lawyer. I didn't plan out on being an advertising lawyer. Literally, I was doing litigation, and I was like, what am I going to do next? And maybe I'm going to have to go become an architect or something. And then literally a friend of mine just said, well, do you want to become an advertising lawyer? And then a month later, I was there. And here we are.
Great stuff. Thank you. And I mentioned earlier on, I had a look at your stats on our platform. We'll maybe start giving awards out next year to the best performing people across the platform. But your stats are amazing. So you clearly recognize the importance of thought leadership on building your brand, on driving business development. In what point in your career did you realize and what inspired you to start creating content and sharing your expert insights?
Well, I think a couple things. I think that as a young lawyer, wanting to build a career, wanting to build a practice, it was really obvious to me when I looked at who the successful lawyers were that they had brands, that they were really recognizable out there in the world. Like they weren't just good at what they did, but people knew who they were, and they knew who they were because they were everywhere. And you would go to a conference and you would see them speaking, and you'd look at the New York Law Journal and they'd be writing the monthly column about the Second Circuit or whatever it was. They would just be everywhere, and they figured out a way to be everywhere. So it was very, very clear to me that it wasn't enough just to do a good job, and it wasn't enough to just like network and do things, but that you really did need to think about kind of brand building. But I also think that there was also this sense of And it was just obvious very early on that people really wanted to go to people that knew what they were talking about, and they were really experts. And so I understood very early on that I needed to do those things. I wasn't quite exactly sure how to do it, but it was obvious to me early on that you needed to be out there, and you needed to be out there a lot. And so I really tried to emulate the people who were doing what I did, but who had really established themselves 30 years before. So I knew that that's what was important. And then sort of as I became more senior as a lawyer, and it was very clear to me as a firm and as a lawyer that thought leadership was really important, that you really did need to be out there and explain and show to people that you were the expert, and clients really wanted to go to the expert, and they wanted to sort of be talking to the person that really knew this stuff. And so, over the years, we experimented with a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, I was a big proponent of, doing client alerts, and we used to do lots of client alerts, and we were creating content in all kinds of different ways. But then, you get into this thing where you don't want to over email the clients, because then we're just spamming them, and you don't want to post on LinkedIn all the time, because then you got too much stuff on LinkedIn and it's not registering people. So I think we definitely were struggling with sort of the available technology at the time to do it. So I think a lot of the process was trying to figure out how to establish thought leadership and the ways you could do it efficiently.
Okay, great. And I work with loads of CMOs, and they often are pulling their hair out trying to get attorneys to engage in thought leadership, to write a blog post, to write an insight, to do a podcast, or whatever it might be. How have you managed to do that, and what can you tell the people? Why have you engaged in, or how have you managed to do that?
Well, I think there's so many things that are going on here. I think first of all, I'm in the unique position is that, when we kicked off Passle, I was managing partner of the firm, as I still am. And so I'm also an advertising lawyer, and I'm practicing full-time as a lawyer too. And so when I made the decision that I wanted to do it, I had to make sure it was successful, right? I couldn't be the managing partner and kick off this thing and have it peter out. Like, it had to work. And so that part of that led to sort of my investment in it. But I do think there's an important lesson there, right? Which is, if you don't have buy-in from the top, if you don't have people who champions of these projects, they're just never really going to work. And we have launched other. So the Passle that I work on is an advertising law one, and we have several of them at the firm, and we've had several more, some of which have worked and some of which have not worked. And I really think at the end of the day, it's about having somebody that's a champion of it, and this idea that, like, oh, we're going to create this thing, and we're going to invite people to participate in it, and I'm kind of like, that just doesn't work, right? Like, you have to actually have a person or two who says, I believe in this thing, I want to do it, I'm going to make it successful, and then people want to be a part of it, right? I mean, we have incredible participation sort of in our group, outside of our group of people who write for it. Now, do they write for it as much as maybe I do? No, not necessarily. But there's definitely, people are participating because it is one of the things that we do in our group. Like, it is a part of what the Frankfurt Kurnit advertising group is writing for this blog. So I think that it was definitely part of, like, it's coming from me. Like, I'm leading it. I believe in it. I talk about it. I send weekly emails out to the firm about firm developments, and I'll talk about the success of the Passle. It is a big part of what we do. And I think the other thing is that when people do write for it, they really do see the results. I mean, that is the thing that's shocking to me. I mean, right, people write for this thing, and they really do get incredible feedback.
That's great. And then before you did it, then what were the barriers to stopping you writing regularly before? I mean, before 8 years ago, were you writing? You're doing these client alerts. So what were the barriers to stopping you writing regularly, and how have you overcome those?
Well, I try to think about it from the sort of perspective. Well, sort of from two things. One, from the client perspective, which is, what does the client want to get, and what is going to be useful to the client. And I remember talking to the consultants and reading this stuff, that that clients wanted value, right? They wanted you to provide extra value, and they wanted you to feel like you were a good partner to their business, and yes, they wanted to be dealing with the experts, so that's part of it too. But I think we also have this incredible sense of information overload, right? We get newsletters from everybody. We get too much content from everybody. That they say they want it, but they actually are getting way too much of it. And so, and I feel that way too. So, to me, what was really important was, and what really resonated with me, was this idea of creating content that wasn't overwhelming to read, right? I mean, often, when people would write these like long alerts that go on, and it's like the New York Times Magazine, and you keep going, and you're like, no one's gonna read that. And I'm like, people want to know, they want like a sentence or two, like they just want to know this thing happened, and then they can file it away. And if they really want to get deeper into it, can I get you a napkin or something? Are you good? And and so to me, what really resonated with me about it was, from a client perspective, it was in a format that was sort of easily digestible. It wasn't intended to be this sort of, I'm going to write that article in the Law Journal about the developments in, I don't know, environmental law in the whole last year. It's like literally something happened, you can write about it, you don't have to make it any bigger than it is. And I thought that was something that, what I've seen with clients is they like the idea of, they can look at it, they look at it for a minute or less, they register what the development is, and they move on, and then, or they share it with people, which they frequently do. I think the second thing is that sort of the internal barrier, which is, I think that lawyers writing articles, right, there are all of these barriers, which is, number one, their first instinct is, who's going to do it for me, right? That's the first question they ask. Like, is the associate going to do me for me? Is there going to be a business development person doing me for me? Are you going to hire somebody to write it for me? Right? That's like they're just looking for someone else to do it. And I think one of the nice thing about this is it's not this overwhelming task. I mean, I frequently will write a blog post kind of as I'm having my morning coffee. You know what I mean? Like I mean, one of the things that our marketing director does, which is great, and now I get a lot of it just from newsletters and Law 360 and things like that, but someone will feed me ideas, right? So Mark, who's our terrific marketing director, except that he didn't come today, is that he'll shoot me like developments, like he has a whatever a ticker on Westlaw or whatever that sends me some interesting cases. So I'll have in my inbox, hey, here's some things you might want to write about. I'll look at them. Depending if it's something for me or something for somebody else, I'll sort of farm them out to people and suggest, hey, you could write about this, or I'll write about this, and something like that. And then I just write about it. And by design, if it takes longer than it takes to drink a cup of coffee or two, it's just taking too long because I got to go on with my day. So I think that it worked both from a strategic standpoint, which was you were getting the message out to clients in a digestible form that they could understand, and at the same time, it was something that the lawyers can really do themselves, that we're not asking them to create this law review article. We're getting them to write content that's meaningful to them, that makes sense for their practice, but at the same time, it's something that they can they can just do.
And that stuff that Mark sends you, is he curating that?
So Mark sends me cases when they come up in his ticker. I get a bunch of newsletters that I skim through every day and look and see what's going on. I mean, there's also people I follow on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I also have I'm writing about advertising law, and I'm really writing about a subset of advertising law that I'm particularly interested in. That's sort of what my brand is or what my expertise is in. So I know where to go to look for those things. Yeah. So I'm focused on sort of particular topics and what I'm writing about.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I see other firms, they maybe use Manzama or they use Google Alerts to try and shimmy the attorneys on a bit and just trigger ideas in their head. I love the bit you mentioned about digestible and the snackable content, because you're right. I think if you look at a law firm's website, so many pieces are so long and kind of stodgy, and that idea of snackable, digestible, so it's got to be easy for you to write, but really easy for your clients to engage with. It reminds me of my kids on TikTok. They can consume it in 20 seconds and skim on to the next thing then.
Well, I think it depends on the industry. It depends on who you're talking to. It depends on what the kinds of developments are. But I do think that lawyers spend a lot of time creating very, very long, detailed content, and I don't really understand who the audience is for that content.
Yeah, no, we've done research looking at shorter form content through Lexology and Mondac and JD Supra, and we can actually pitch it against those longer form content, and you can see the shorter form content gets more reads, gets more engagement, people do more with it once they've read it, because they never get to the end of this longer
No. I
form.
mean, look, I send a sort of during the pandemic, I started sending a weekly email on Fridays to the firm, sort of, keeping us all together and updating people and stuff like that. And, I have a format that I use, and it's numbered. And, people don't, how many numbers? Is it 4 or 5 things I say? And people don't make it to the end. Like someone will say to me, I'll run into somebody in the hall and they'll be like, so when is the holiday party? And I was like, it was in my email. They're like, I don't read past 3. So it's like, yeah, I think you do need to pay attention to how long the content is.
That's great. And when you say snack, when you talk about being snackable and that's what your clients want, do they tell you that? Have they told you this is great, Jeff? Or are you guessing, or how do you know that's good for them?
Well, I will say that the response to the blog has been incredible, right? Like, not just in terms of, yes, obviously we see it gets lots of views and, there's that. But I would say that people really do find it interesting and they want the content. And as a result of it, I would say, people are responding all of the time to it, right? Either I will get an email from a client following up, asking a question, asking to set up a call, saying they want to talk about this issue more. So I will absolutely get that. The second thing is I will get someone responding and saying, hey, can you add these people to the list? I want them to be getting this content. I think I've told you guys this story, but literally, it happens to me all the time. I get stopped at industry conferences, and people come up to me and introduce themselves to me and say, I love your blog. Like, I love your blog. And, a woman who teaches says, oh, yeah, I sign it to my class. Like, people see the content as being useful, and you keep hearing people sort of talk about how useful they see it is. And people read it, so yeah, we get lots and lots of feedback. I get reporters calling me all the time to talk about stuff because of the content. New clients call because of the content. I also think, I'm also a big believer in, trying to focus a little bit. Like when I sort of say to people in my group is, I want you to write for the blog, right? And and you can write whatever you want, but I also think it's a good idea to sort of pick some topics and try to dig deep into those topics, because it's not just for show. Like, it's actually, like, I don't see this as just, yes, it's marketing, but I also see it as actually professional development, right? Which is like, and I will say, one of the amazing things that for Passle has me is I've never read so many cases in my life, right? I've never been as up to date on all of the sort of the things that are going on in my field, because I'm reading cases that, I wouldn't necessarily have needed to read, because it's not like they're the biggest change in law, but you're just so staying up to date on it because I'm looking for content, and as a result of that, I've become just so familiar with things in a way that you just wouldn't have been before. And so I really encourage lawyers in my group to, hey, if you're really interested in this topic, dig deep into that, right? Be the one who's going to write all of the cases on this topic, and then really feel like you're going to build an expertise. And I think that really resonates with clients as well. I mean, if you look at what the topics are that I've tracked, that I've focused on writing about on Passle, it tracks so closely with the things people call me about now.
Okay. And when you're reading those cases or those bits of the law, are you reading them, and are you thinking of them in a different way? Because are you always thinking, I'm going to write something about that. I've got something to say about that. Do you think about it in a different way when you're reading those articles?
Yeah. I mean, if it's a case about like a snack food or Entenmann's, any case about Entenmann's I'm going to write about. For the obvious reasons. I would say that, yes, you want it to be interesting, right? Like, some really long case about some weird insurance thing. Sorry if you work in non-insurance. But I'm just like, it's hard for me to get that excited about. But like something that's really interesting that I feel like people are going to want to read. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely thinking about it from that perspective as well. No question.
Great stuff. And when you have those other people in your practice doing it, so you got maybe a new lawyers come in, or the other lawyers across the ad law practice, are they engaging now? Are they doing it because, well, the boss is doing it, so he says we have to do it? Or are they really getting engaged, and are they seeing the impact that you've seen?
So I think that, absolutely. I think that, people across the firm have incredible stories about how the content they've written has resonated with clients and with people out there. So I think that people don't need to be convinced that it's useful. I think it's, look, there's only so many hours in the day and people have to decide how they want to spend their time. But what I would say is that there are people in my group who are very devoted to it, and in their minds they're writing once a month or once a week or however much they want to, or they're only writing about copyright law, and if there's a good copyright case, then they'll write about that. So I think there's that group of people. Then there's people that write occasionally when there's something that they're interested in. And then, I also, if I see a good case or something, I'll send it to an associate and say, here's a good thing for you to write about. And they usually do it if I ask them to.
And with your demanding schedule, how often are you doing this now? Are you doing this every day? Are you doing it once a week?
I would say in the beginning, again, I really wanted it to be successful, right? I'm spending money on it. I'm saying, hey, this is this project that I'm taking on. And so I did not want it to be a failure. So in the beginning, I was doing it every day. I mean, literally for the first couple of years, I was doing it every day. And it was a big commitment, but I was trying to get it to the point where I felt like we had a readership, and I felt like people in my group and in my firm were devoted to it, and that it sort of would, I didn't need to be the one writing on it every day, but I wanted people to see that this was going to be an active enough thing that they were interested in reading it and interested in writing for it. So now, now maybe I write twice a week.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll write more, but I would say that we probably post on the blog almost every day, right? I mean, someone's posting on it, and maybe once every other week I'll send something to someone and suggest that they write it. Most of it's just all self-generated. They find things they want to write about and they do.
Great. And so you've created this content. How do you, at the firm, how are you distributing it? How are you actually getting, and we talked about hundreds of thousands of reads of your content, but actually you probably don't need hundreds of thousands of people reading it. You need the right people. So how are you distributing that, and how are you getting the right people reading and engaging with it then?
Well, so I would say, if I look at the sort of hierarchy of things that are on my mind, right? The first is, I'm an expert in advertising law. I want to be an expert in advertising law, and I want clients to think of me as that way. Like, I want to be able to help people when they call me. So, honestly, in many ways, the driver now at this point is like, I want to know everything that's going on that's important. So, like, even before you get to the blog, someone sends me a new case, or I look on Law 360 that there's this development. I'm reading it now because I've gotten myself in that habit of like, I want to be on top of all these things. So that's kind of number one. It's I want to have the expertise and I want to be helpful to the clients. Like, that's even before I get to the marketing piece of it. Then from a marketing piece standpoint, I try to be strategic, which is I try to write about something that I think is consistent with who I am and who I'm out there telling clients that I am. But then I also try to think about how that would be useful. Like, I'm a big proponent of that when you do business development, you shouldn't just do something as a standalone thing. Meaning, if you're just writing a blog post as a blog post, okay, that's fine. But if you're writing a blog post that is also a blog post that will be interesting to some people, and you can send it to them, and then you'll be helping them. Putting aside the marketing effort, you're going to be helping them, and they're going to appreciate your partnership and doing that. And then you go, well, I've got this speaking thing on environmental marketing coming up next month. And so every blog post I write about environmental marketing is helping me get ready for that presentation, right? And so I'm really thinking about it as, okay, if I'm doing this, hopefully I'm doing it for multiple purposes. To educate myself, because I want to write the blog post, because I know there's a couple clients who I'd like to send this to, because this is an important development for them, because I know that I've got these things coming up in the next couple months that I can use it for, or I'm looking at multiple ways to do it for everyone thinks. And sometimes I'll write a blog post literally for a particular client. Like, I'll see a development, be like, let me process it by writing the blog post, and then I'll send it to the client. And I don't care whether anybody else is reading it. I'm just doing it because I wanted a reason to reach out to that person.
Great. I'm looking at the marketeers here. Wouldn't you love to have Jeff in leading the charge at your firms, guys? Wouldn't this be lovely? Make your jobs a lot easier. So you've talked about publishing thought leadership and how it helps you maintain relevance, show you're the expert in this niche area that you specialize in. Do you have any real life examples of your insights actually leading directly to new client relationships or new business opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would say the first thing is I think that they're really, I mean, you don't need me to tell you, there's stuff happening in the world, And I think I think that there are developments that happen that people need to know about, and clients actually want you to tell them about them when they happen. So it is extraordinarily efficient, right? Like when there's a new law passed in California that affects environmental marketing, which is one of the things I spend a lot of time on, it's so much. It's so easy for me to write a blog post about it and then shoot it to those dozen clients that need to know about it. And this is exactly what they want. I'm being a good partner to them, and at the same time, it's absolutely leading to them asking us to help them think about those issues. So I think that there's that aspect of it. I think the second thing is that when there are important issues going on, I think demonstrating that you're an expert in the area brings people to you, and it all the time. All the time, people who are looking for somebody who needs help on environmental marketing or needs help with counseling about the Federal Trade Commission or something, whatever the topics that I'm writing about, people find me. Like they absolutely do. And look, I'm good about I post it on Passle. We amplify the content in all of the ways that people amplify content. I mean, if we're creating it, we're going to make sure that we're going to maximize the impact on it of it. So absolutely, people are coming to me. And I would say that both my experience and the experience of so many people in my firm is clients come to us out of the blue and say, you read about this problem you wrote about, and it's exactly the problem we're having, and we want to hire you. And so absolutely. I mean, I would, even without those stories, I would think it was valuable, but you do see the kind of very, very direct ROI as well.
Well, if you get the direct ROI, it makes you want to do it again, I suppose. So you said there, you shoot it out, you'll do this post, you shoot it to 6 or 7 clients. How are you doing that? Have you got a newsletter you send it out in, or how do you do that?
We do send a weekly, a summary of, I think what we do is we send the sort of top 10 most viewed posts every month to our entire mailing list. So we do that. So that's one way to get it to people. But if I'm writing something that's of particular interest to a particular group of clients, I'll just take a few minutes and send it to them. Okay. Share it on LinkedIn, those kinds of things.
Okay, great. And are you ever looking at the competition? Do you ever see did you feel you've got by being engaged with this, by getting your team engaged with this? Do you feel like we're ahead of the competition here because they're maybe not doing what you're doing?
I'm not a competitive person in that way. I don't look at the competition. If you ask me what are the people who do what I do, how are they marketing, I really honestly have no idea. I think that I believe one of the reasons that Passle has been so good is I feel like it does all of the things that we want it to do, which is educate the lawyers, help lawyers build a brand, help lawyers reach out, help lawyers provide extra value to clients. Like it's doing all of those things at the same time. So
just rewrote our website homepage there, Jeff. So thanks for that.
So from that perspective, like it works. Maybe there are other people that do it in other ways. Like people are doing, friends of mine who do what I do. I see they post their podcast or their video, their vlog or whatever on LinkedIn. And I think if that's working for you, that's great. To me, I don't want to do that. To me, I think one of the things that has been so good for me about this is you can make it as long or short as you want. And you can also do it whenever. I can do it early in the morning or late at night or on the train or while I'm having a sandwich. I'm not dependent on other people and a camera and a microphone and all those kinds of things. It's the kind of thing you can sort of fit in. So for me, it also, look, I'm a big proponent of, if you're going to be committed to business development, you have to do it every day. It has to just be a part of your life. It can't be the thing that you save for when you got extra time on Friday afternoon. And so to me, part of it is when I'm giving advice to lawyers about business development is tactics. You have to develop the tactics that you are going to follow. It's going to be different for everybody. Everyone's going to have some things that are more comfortable for them and work better, and depends on the types of clients that they work with. And there's all kinds of strategies that work. But I think that if you have things that keep you on track that says, hey, these are things I'm going to do every day or every week, I think that that's really useful. So I think for us, this has worked really, really well.
Great. And so for lawyers looking to enhance business development through thought leadership, what would be your top maybe 3 tips. What would be your top tips for getting started and getting sustaining a successful thought leadership strategy?
Well, I guess the first question is the first question I guess when I'm talking to a lawyer about wanting to do business development, and they're sort of saying, well, I really want to do business development, the first question is, do you really? Like, do you, I know you're saying that, but like, do you really want to do it? Someone's like, well, maybe I'll go hire a coach. And I'm like, that's great. Like, a coach could be great for people, but like, then you're going to have to do the stuff that the coach wants you to do. So I think the first question is, are you going to be committed to it? And is this something you really want to do? Right? That's, like, I think, number one. Right? I think the second question I ask is, what's the lawyer you want to be? Right? What is you can't do business development unless you've decided what it is the business you want and what kind of lawyer you want to be and what kind of clients you want to work with. And so you have to I sort of think it's like, don't just start writing and don't start speaking and don't start running out there and having lunch with people who do this. First, who are you? Like, what's your brand? And, I often go through this exercise with lawyers and I say, like, let's look at your bio on your website. Not because I think the bio is such an important marketing tool, but it's how they've described themselves to the outside world, right? And I say, does that really describe who you want to be? Let's figure out what your strategy is and articulate who you want to be, and then let's build a strategy around that. So then I sort of say, like, look, if you're going to then do business development, then I sort of say, well, okay, who are the clients you want to work with? What are the things you want to work with them on? And what would be helpful to them? Like, what's the stuff, what's the ways in which you can engage with them? And so for some clients, like, this is, like a lot of people, like I work with people at advertising agencies, and advertising agency people, they want to know what's going on, and they want to hear about the developments, and they want to be up to date on if there's been some change in advertising regulation, or if there's been some copyright case that impacts the advice that they're going to be giving to their clients. So for us, we know what kind of content is going to be useful to them, and we sort of give it to them. So I think you have to sort of figure that out. I also think there is just no question that more than ever, clients are coming to us with the hard questions, right? The easy questions they'll answer themselves. The routine stuff they're going to do themselves. They don't need like high-end lawyers for that stuff. So you have to really stay ahead of them. And you have to say, I'm going to dig into that question before you even ask it to me. So when you come to me, this is something I'm already an expert in. So I think that lawyers have to really decide what it is you're going to be an expert in, and then be committed to doing it. And I'm sort of like, look, if this is not what you want to do, then don't do it. Like, if that's not, whatever, wait for somebody to ask you to help them on something. That's fine. But if you want to do it, I think that there are so many tools out there. I think this is a great tool. There's other tools too. There's other ways to do it. I have partners who would never write a blog post in their whole life and would never speak at a conference in their whole life and have incredible careers and reputations, and they have their own ways that they do it. And I think that's great. Like, I think that there are absolutely many different ways you can do it. I just think if you want to do it, you have to pick a way, but I do think you have to have a strategy too.
Okay. And for all these marketeers in the room, have you any tips for them about how to get busy attorneys behind a thought leadership program? Maybe how to get the managing partner engaged? How do you think they should do that?
Well, look, I do think, for any firm initiative, buy-in is going to involve, leadership from the top, right? If the managing partner, if the practice group leader, if the people these people are working with, whatever, if they're not committed to it because they're too busy, it's not important to them, whatever, no one else is really going to buy in either, right? Like, they're not going to be committed to it. So I think you really have to get the buy-in. I think the second thing is I am not one of those people who believes that you get other people to do the thing that you just have to do yourself. Like, I think this sort of fantasy that, like, I'm going to give a speech and some associate's going to deliver a presentation to me that I can just show up and present makes any sense, right? To me, like, yeah, you can do that, and I certainly have help with people who help me prepare things and help people. We write things together and we do all kinds of things like that, but I think that people have to really be committed to actually making this a part of who they are as a lawyer. I think it's hard. Like, I think you can't lead somebody who doesn't want to be led, and I think you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. And I think that, to me, the biggest complaint that I hear about, like, the marketing function is, I don't understand why they can't just do it. Like, why aren't they just doing it for me? And I'm just like, I don't know what it is you think that they could do. Like, this is, you have to understand the issue and write about it so you can talk about it. And so to me, but I don't know how to solve. The mallet? I don't know. I'm not sure how you do it.
I see a few people out there who I know keep mallets in their bags. Jeff, that's been amazing. Insightful, everyone? Yeah. Have we got some questions from our crew? While we have Jeff here, maybe ask some questions that he can help you with.
Hi, Jeff. Phil McGowan, formerly at Reed Smith, and I'm a legal marketing consultant right now. I wanted to ask you about the client feedback component. So you're putting content out into the world, and you talked earlier about the feedback that you are getting, or people are coming to you. How much are you engaging with clients and others about how you should be refining what you're saying, the frequency, all of that, the crowdsourcing components?
So did you work with Doug Wood? No, you didn't work with Doug. So who was a great mentor to me from Reed Smith, and had many helpful things to say. I would say that we don't spend a lot of time surveying the clients and asking them for stuff, and I know that is one of the things that people do, and we probably should do more of that. I would say that we do get a lot of direct, just sort of feedback from the clients about the content we're creating. So I would say, from at least with respect to this type of content, we tend to get very good feedback that this is the kind of content that they're looking for. I mean, I would say that, people want practical, useful stuff that is easy to digest. And so I think that, we get the positive reinforcement of like, oh yeah, that was really interesting. Or, clients love it when they call me with a question. I'm like, look, I've just done a blog on this. I'll send that to you. Like, they love that. Like, they feel like, oh, they're getting such value. It's already been thought through. We already know what we're talking about here. And then it leads to follow-ups, and we get deeper into that. So I would say that we don't spend a lot of time writing about like esoteric things that are never going to come up. We try to really write about the stuff that's happening now and that's relevant to people, and try to get ahead of it.
Do you still do the big client alerts then sometimes? Or is that longer form stuff you more focus on the digestible items?
I personally do not do any client alerts anymore. Like there are people at my firm that still send out client alerts. Some of them write for blogs and use blogs and all that kind of stuff, but they just feel like, hey, this is something we want to send out to the clients. Like, to me, like, I'm like, if you want to know what I have to say about this stuff, there, you know where it is. That's kind of where I am.
Okay.
I also don't love emailing clients out of the blue. Like, it kind of, unless I'm like, I sort of feel like if the client's getting an email from me, it's important. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so I just don't really like sending them junk mail.
Okay. So would you send them say I just wrote this blog, I thought it might be of interest to you?
But I'm not sending it to my mailing list.
Yeah.
I'm sending it to 6 people who I know actually will not think of it as a marketing email, which it's not. They'll think of it as, oh, this is helpful to me, and this is what I need. And that's what a good partner does.
And that's what good thought leadership's about, I suppose, as well. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Liz Lockett. So some of the pushback I would get from lawyers was that they were continuing to sort of saturate their current marketing list. How did you organically expand that target audience?
Well, I think some of it is that, we do the weekly newsletter to everybody, right? So we do the weekly newsletter to our entire list that has everything on there. And so we're not sending it out every day. We're just sending it out once a week. We're only sending the top 10 most read blogs. So in theory, it's hitting the things that are most likely to be interesting to people. So we're sending it to them. Then what we do is we do a lot of promotion of the blog as like a brand itself. So, if I'm speaking at a conference and we're giving away something, we're putting our blog URL on there or promoting the blog as like, this is a place to go get information from us. And so we work on building the audience that way. Then we amplify it. I mean, everything we post on Passle, we gets sent out through Mondac, it gets sent out through Lexology, it gets shared in social media. So we're putting it in all the places that we can reasonably think to place it. That's kind of how we built the audience.
Great, thanks, Liz. Anyone else?
One question just on, you obviously create and share your own insights. Do you do the same with your colleagues? And if so, how do you do that?
You mean, do I share what they're doing?
Yes.
So a couple of things. One, I think there's a couple ways we do that. Number one, we're all, if we post something on Passle that is relevant, or my colleagues post something, I might share that with clients as well, right? Or share on social media and stuff like that. I mean, I'm cognizant of not oversharing, right? So I'm thinking about how often I'm posting on Twitter, or how often I'm posting on whatever it's called now, how often I'm posting on LinkedIn. Like I'm thoughtful about that, but also if one of my colleagues posts something that's really important, I'll share that, or I'll send it to some people. I mean, I think there are some firms where they really try to share everything that everyone does, and it's just a little bit too much. So I try to just be thoughtful about it, but absolutely, and frequently I will post a blog post, and my clients, my partners will send it to clients and CC me and things like that. So we do that. I mean, another nice thing is we learned about Passle from this firm, Lewis Silkin in the UK, who also was posting a little bit before us. And frequently we will repost their things on our blog as well, because they're also posting on advertising law topics, but from a British perspective. So we'll share their content. There's some other firms that we work with that also have Passles that we might share content with. So I love that. I love this sort of, particularly for firms with just a US based firm where we've got all of these really good relationships with firms around the world who are using it. So we'll often repost content that way and share that content too.
And you guys are sharing work and you're sharing business, I assume, then as well, Jeff? Yeah. Great. Anyone else?
Hi, Jeff. You mentioned earlier when you were getting started using Passle, did you already have a definitive approach in mind, or did you fire a few shots of the gun and then find your way from there?
Well, I think in the beginning, I really was just desperate for it to be successful, right? and because I didn't want to be embarrassed, right? And so I was writing about anything. I was literally trying to post every day because I really wanted the thing to build both an audience. I wanted to build an internal audience who was going to then write for it with me, and I wanted to build an external audience and interest and stuff like that. So I would write about, if it was related to advertising law, I was writing about it, regardless of whether it's my own sort of interest or not. I was just, and I was really committed to writing every day. So sometimes it would be a small development. You know what I mean? I would really try to come up with stuff, and I'd do Westlaw searches, and I'd be like, I got to come up with something for today. So I was definitely casting a very, very wide net in terms of getting the content out there. And so I think that where I'm right now is I'm not trying to write on by any means every day. And I'm also trying to be strategic, right? I think that one of the things that I've noticed is that it really resonates with the outside world when the content I'm writing has a theme to it and is related. And yes, it's all advertising law, but I think that what resonates most with both clients and prospective clients and reporters and government officials and all these people who are all these people that are reading it is they sort of say, oh, you are this expert in this and this, and they're really interested in what I have to say about those things. And so that seems to be where I am right now. So something comes up that's about subscription renewal laws, and like that's not really my thing. I could write about it. I help clients with it, but it's not really my thing. So I'd have one of my colleagues who writes about that write about that, and that seems to work a little bit better.
Hi, at the back there.
Have you had any sort of drawbacks on editorial oversight, or maybe some partner stepping out of their lane, and how did you manage that, and sort of what's your approach on that?
So I am definitely, if this were the managing partner podcast, and we be talking about the fact that maybe I'm a little bit too much of a micromanager and I don't let things go, but I also review and edit all the other things that get posted on our blog. And I did it mostly because, again, I was trying to say, like, I'm committed to this thing. I'm going to put the time in. I'm going to do it. And sometimes it's a drag. Sometimes someone writes something and you're like, really? You're this years old and you don't know how to write? And so there's moments where I'm dreading having to write it. And there are times where I'll be like, send it to somebody and ask somebody else to edit it first. So, like, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I will say that I would say that it's a time commitment. I mean, that's one of the drawbacks. I would say that, getting people to do it and make sure that it's good and get it out the door. I mean, I think the other problem is the bottleneck. Like, I'm not going to be a bottleneck, right? So it doesn't do any good if you convince somebody to write a blog post and then it sits in your desk for a week. Like, I will get it out within a couple hours. Like, I will stop what I'm doing and make sure that it gets out because they've taken the time to do it. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the funniest things that happens is that the parties in the cases often read the blog posts, right? So we'll write about a new case, and I will get feedback directly, like from the parties either agreeing or disagreeing with what I said or wanting to whatever, but that's all part of it, I mean, I would say, look, we are thoughtful about it. I mean, we run conflict checks before we write everything, so we make sure that we're not writing about stuff we're not supposed to be writing about. There's sometimes we make decisions that this is not something we want to write about, or we write about it in a particular way. Like, I'm not, my own particular style or our own particular style is not to be super opinionated about it. It's much more about just reporting on it and giving people what the developments are. I think, I learned, so I forgot about this, but for earlier in my career, I wrote a weekly column, monthly column, I don't remember what it was, in a trade magazine about advertising law. And I loved doing it. And it was great. But it was, it was harder because it was on a very specific schedule. It had to be a very specific length because it was going in a specific spot. And there was this one time where I wrote this article, and the defendant's argument was so ridiculous. Like, it was like embarrassing. And I kind of made fun of them in the article about it. And the defendant was a friend of one of my partners, and emailed him and said, "Was that really necessary?" And he was right. It wasn't necessary. So, like, I've kind of, like, we try to really have a nice tone about it too, which is like, even if we really disagree or think that someone's doing it's a bad decision, I think there's ways to communicate that, like if a judge issues a decision that's so plainly wrong, might just say something like, unclear whether other courts are going to decide it the same way. You know what I mean? Like, we try to be like a nice member, have it come across as being a nice thing as opposed to this snarky thing.
Do you have written down editorial guidelines in that, or is it just everyone kind of knows what the line is?
Look, I think that we've expressed some of that. I don't think we have. I'm not a big fan of writing policies that no one's going to read. Yeah. So, like, we express it. I mean, like, I think there have been moments over the last couple of years where some of the blog posts have veered toward the political, which, as they should in a way. But I think also it has to fit within the context of what we're writing about and has to make sense. So.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Jeff. Anyone else? Any final question? Great. Well, listen, Jeff, it's been amazing having you here today talking. So often with, I think, thought leadership and content program, people think it's a a marketing and communications thing. But hopefully what we've seen from Jeff, that it is marketing communication, but it's linking it so tightly with business development, and you wouldn't do it if it wasn't going to drive business and drive the brand and the firm. So it's been amazing. So please, everyone, big round of applause, and thank you so much for coming, Jeff.